The one from California was an only child too.
Yeah.
And we have another Leah. We all name after this.
Okay, we're standing by, so
Okay.
it'll be just a couple seconds now. And when I start to ask you questions, you know that's the beginning.
Okay.
Please tell us your name
Well, my name is Leah Starkman.
and where and when you were born.
I'm born in Charleroi, Belgium, on July 31st, 1929.
Can you tell us something about your life as a young child in Belgium?
Well, my parents were just average people. My father was a shoemaker. My mother was a housewife, part-time dressmaker, seamstress, whatever you want. And we had a normal life. My father was very active in the Jewish community, so I was always behind him and going with him every place. I was an amateur actor at the age of 5 with my father guiding me. He was a singer, and I enjoyed doing things with him. I went to school till 3rd grade, till the war started. And
do you remember any anti-Semitism in Belgium?
not
as you
really,
were
not
growing
before the war, or maybe if there was, we didn't get in contact with it, nothing at all. We have Gentile friends who lived around us. There were only maybe 2 or 3 Jewish families in that street, and that's it. You know, I mean, it was like townhouse they would call here. You know, it's not a little single home. And my father had his business right at the beginning of the street there by the main street. And no, I didn't, not that I remember, I didn't see nothing that affected me, really.
Were your parents born in Belgium?
No, my parents are born in Poland. My mother is from, I don't know if she was born in Częstochowa, but I think it's outside of Częstochowa. And my father is too from outside Częstochowa. I remember it's Krzepitz.
Did you ever have an opportunity to go to Poland?
Yes, in 1938. I went to Poland, and I only saw one set of grandparents from my mother's side and her sisters. She had 4 sisters there. I had 4 cousins. And from my father's side, he had 1 sister, 2 sisters. One who had 1 child, that was 1 cousin who was alive. And the oldest sister who had 6 or 7 children, there is only 1 who was alive, who survived.
Leah, can you tell us how life began to change for your family?
In 1940, when the Germans entered into Belgium, and we heard about it. I live in the southern of Belgium, so a few neighbors got together, bought a truck, an older truck, and we all evacuated in that truck. And the truck was packed, and there were like 2 or 3 people of the group who knew how to drive the truck, so they drove. We were about 7 or 8 children, and between all the neighbors and their family. And we evacuated into France. When we passed the border, the truck broke down, so we couldn't find nobody to repair it. So we went on and stayed on a farm, everybody. From there, we all split up, and each one went their way. Some went back into Belgium, and some of us kept going. My parents and myself were the one who kept going and went deeper into France, more to the southern part in the Ardèche, and somewhere in the mountain. And we stayed there till my parents were arrested. My father was a shoemaker, so with a bicycle and a basket in front of him, went around to the farm and collect their shoes to repair them. My mother was a dressmaker, so knew how to sew. She went all around and offered her trade, you know, to be able, if they needed people to sew, and one farmer told another. So we did fairly well. I mean, we survived, and we had food because they didn't pay us with money, they paid us with the food. Then she worked for a special family. He was the Baron de la Roque in the Ardèche there. That was their summer home. So he was there. I think they had 9 or 10 children. And she made the clothes for these children. And if a daughter got married, she made her trousseau, you know, the linen, the embroidery. I was doing a lot of the embroidery my mother had taught me. just to keep me around her, so she taught me how to sew by hand. In March 1942, or maybe a little bit before, I don't remember the date, maybe it was February, or the end of February. Oh no, before my father had to go for hard labor. And he left for the week, came back on the weekend. Around February, a truck came up to the door. I was not at home then. And the girls told me there is a truck with an, I don't remember how they used to call them. It is the French who work with the Nazis, you know, with the German, are there and they're picking up your parents. And so they hold me back. They didn't let me go home. Some of the adults who knew that the truck was there. But my father was a comedian and actor, passed out. I mean, he acted up that he passed out, and he couldn't get up. He didn't, like he was unconscious. So they left him there, and they said to my mother, we'll come back. After the truck went away, it was really up a hill in the mountain. After the truck went away, the adult kept me. It was like a restaurant, like a hostel place, you know. They rented a room upstairs and food. And then after this, when someone came and told them the truck had left the little town, I went back home. And I walked in and my father was laughing, so I knew he was all right. He says, I got him. They didn't take me. But they're going to come back. So my father says, let's go somewhere else. Some of the farmers would have taken us in and hid us. But my mother had in her mind, and I'll never forget, I want to go to Poland. I'll be with my parents. My father couldn't fight her. I still remember what happened. I mean, the arguments and everything. She just wanted to go with her parents and her sisters. We'll be all together. Never thinking that some atrocity like this would happen. Or, you know, just thought she might be like in a ghetto all together and we'll survive all together. My father had a fear because he had a brother that had come from Germany in 1935 or 36, I don't remember, and told them what went on in Germany. So he had that fear that it's going to happen then too, and he wanted to go into hide. She didn't want to. So decided we all stick together. Well, in March 1942, I don't remember the date exactly, a truck came. There was other Jewish people in the truck that they must have picked up all alone. And we were told, pack the strict necessary and go in that truck. We all went together. When we went in the, how you call this, like Colombia is for, like the state house, the capital of the Ardèche. I think it was Privas. Yeah, I think it was Privas. We were all Jews. Gathered there in the big yard. I didn't realize there were so many Jews in that small little department of France, you know, or maybe they came from another department. All of a sudden, on the loudspeaker, they called my mother and me, but not my father. So my mother went to the office and I stayed with my daddy. The Baron de la Roque, his wife, wanted to take my mother out and me to keep, because she needed my mother for, you know, helping her with the repair and all the clothes. My mother still said, no, I'm going to Poland. I want to be with my parents. I don't know if she would have survived, but okay, you know, even if she would have stayed, because we found out something after the war. Then the Baron de la Roque was working with the Nazi. All right. So we found this out after the war. And after this, we were all taken by trucks. I think it was trucks. And we were taken to Vénissieux. It's by Lyon in France there. We were in a camp. It looked like it was a camp with Indochina people, like the Vietnamese, you know. I don't know, because France, that used to be hard labor. You went to Indochina for, instead of life, they send you over there for life. And that's all what I saw, Oriental people around there, but not too many. And they put us in barracks, and little mattress on the floor made out of straw or things, whatever they had. And we all lay there on the floor. Meanwhile, while my father was walking, my mother wasn't well then. She had already had one gallbladder attack after another, and she was depressed and everything. So then when there in the camp, she realized a little bit that maybe she did a mistake. After this, my father walks in the yard and finds a man that used to be start talking with other Jewish people, that used to be a neighbor of my uncle, his brother, his older brother. And he says, where is my brother? My father was, wondering, is my brother here? He says, no, your brother they didn't take. In the beginning, when they start taking them in the other half of France, you see the first part of France was under Vichy government. So the German didn't come down that fast, when they came down to us, when they took over all France, So that's when they came down and took over the whole part and started picking out the Jews from the southern part, below Vichy. So he says, no, in the beginning they don't take women who are pregnant. My aunt was pregnant with her first child. But my aunt and my uncle went into hiding, so they were lucky they weren't taken. He says, that's what happened. They didn't take it. After this, we stayed a while there, and all of a sudden, the underground, or the Red Cross was involved. I really don't know, but they were dressed as the Red Cross. You had to go to the infirmary, and it was going around, who wants to leave their child behind? You have to come and sign papers. My mother still didn't want me to go. My father fought her. He took me away from her, and I still remember the picture.
It's okay. Just take a moment, and then you'll talk.
My mother screaming, "No, take my child away." My father took me, and he went and signed the paper. So that night, all the children had to be brought, the paper were signed, had to be brought to the dining room. It was a big hall with table and bench. The older girl or the older children had to take care of the smaller one, 2 years old, 1 year old, babies. I had a child who was about 2.5 years old. That was my responsibility. All of a sudden, we see the big buses going and taking our parents away, and I kept watching to see our parents going, but I didn't see mine. There was one mother who saw that little boy that I held in my arm and broke the glass of the truck, put her arm out in the blood, and that little boy screaming, "Mama!" But the truck went on. The bus went on. It was a bus. Then they came with truck in the middle of the night and took us out, rushed us out. We were supposed to be rushed out. We got rushed out, and they put us in a place in the evening. It must have been because it looked like Boy Scout sign, like it must be a center for youth, or Boy Scout or Girl Scout, I don't know. And they had a beautiful yard. All the children were allowed to play outside. We felt relief. We start forgetting about what happened. Everybody played. But each older child had the responsibility of the little one. At night, when we all had to take off the children, the smaller one, the older one washing the children, wash them, get them ready for bed. There were voluntary workers feeding us, but they didn't have enough to help us with the little kids. So the older took care of the little one, and then whatever there was no older children, the adult took care. They had a nurse there. They had a doctor, was a man there, I don't know. And the little boy starts screaming and crying, didn't want to go to sleep without his mommy and things like this. I went hysterical, and they took me to the infirmary. I just lost control of myself, and they gave me a shot. And after this, I didn't know what happened. I don't know how long I was. During the time that I was asleep, something must have happened, and I was put in a room upstairs by myself on the floor. When I woke up, I don't know how long I was sleeping there. I woke up one time, and I found myself all alone. I looked out the window, I didn't see nothing. The room was completely empty. And I tried to walk down the steps to find my way out of there. And then I saw a woman coming to the steps, and they say, "Are you one of the children?" I said, "No." I didn't know what she was. I was scared. But then I was going to go back up, and I waited, standing there by the steps, and that woman knocks at the door. He says, "Do you still have some of these children? I'll take a few to hide them." He says, "No, we don't have them." After that woman left, I went out the door and knocked at the door. I says, "I just heard you saying to that woman, what happened to the other children? What's going to happen with me? I'm here alone." She said, well, she got scared, I guess. She says, "You go back from where you come. Go back up there. Real, scary." I went back up there and stayed there. In the late afternoon, there's a young woman who came with a bunch of, I didn't eat, I don't remember how long, a bunch of grape in a bag. They used to give this, like in Europe, when someone was sick, that's what you brought them, She says, "Look, I'm pretending I come and visit someone sick, and here, eat the grape I know you didn't eat, and let's go." I says, "Where's my suitcase?" She says, "It's gone." Well, I cried, not that much for the clothes, but I had a suit of my mother and a pair of shoes of her she had put in that suitcase, and told me there was money hidden and the shoulder pad, in emergency to use it. To me, that suit was meant more than anything else. I felt like that could help me eventually. Well, she took me and put me in a no, we went and stopped at a sidewalk cafe, and another, I guess from the other ground, were there, and watching all around them. And I had only the clothes I had on me. And they took me and they put me in a convent. And they asked me what I could do, because I was 12, I could help in the kitchen. I said, "I'll do anything." I said, "All right." And I was helping in the kitchen, peeling the vegetable and everything. And then I went in the sewing room. Then all of a sudden, I started having, I felt like I was choking. I guess I couldn't talk. I just, I don't know, I was in a state of shock. And I felt like I always had a lump in my throat. I couldn't eat. I just didn't want to talk. I guess I was going through depression. And they took me, another person came and picked me up, and they put me in a hospital. I had a private room. And that's when I got my name, another name. They changed my name to Leonie Wagner. And that's the name that stayed with me till after the war. I stayed there, they ran some tests, they didn't find nothing wrong. They took me out. And then they took me to a Presbyterian minister. They were lovely people. They took care of me.
Do you remember the name of the minister?
Not really, no. I do not. I tried to think about it, and I just cannot remember their name. And he was very nice. She was lovely too, but she expected a baby, and she was disappointed. I was very short and skinny. I looked so pathetic. I mean, for my age, I didn't look my age. And so I was 12, I looked 9 or 8. And she wanted an older child, should be able to help her and take care of her 2 other children. Well, she was pregnant. So I was not convenient to her. Well, my asthma got worse, I guess, because I was scared. Here I go again. They took me out of my room, and they got another Jewish girl who was older, 16, 17. I says, great, now I have a pal. I won't be, we both have the same problem. But the minister's wife was much happier with that older child, to show the people, not to make it obvious, I guess, because I could hear her talking with her husband, that it should look more like it's a maid she hired than hiding a child. And in the same time, it was a Jewish child. So they gave her my room, and they put me in the maid's room in the attic. Well, the asthma got worse when I was up there. So they decided, I don't know, they're going to take me to a preventorium. It's a place where children from the city who have problem with bronchitis or asthma, and they put them there to recover or to be treated. And I stayed there many months. I know I passed the winter because I remember we went sledding in the snow, all the children together. Nobody knew, maybe the monitress, I don't know how you we call it monitress over there, the counselors, the counselor, knew that I was Jewish. I really don't know. All right, everything was pretty good for quite a few months, but after this, they had to hide me in there till they could find someone. There was a rumor that they were picking up all the children from homes and things like this, that, you know, like centers, camp, you know, like there they call them colony, you know, children colony that parents used to send to change the you know, they used it for fresh air, they said, like not to be in the city. So they start picking up other Jewish children. So there was a rumor going around that they have to get rid of me too. You know, they cannot keep me, it would endanger all the other children. I don't know if they got rid of the other Jewish children, but okay, I know I had to go. So the minister came and talked to me, said goodbye. And I remember he gave me a present, but I don't even remember what it is, a little token of something. Oh yeah, there was another thing happened while I was in the home. I want to go back to this. When I arrived there, the doctor there, his wife wanted to adopt a child. And I was under the impression he was Jewish too, but he was an assimilated Jew who didn't, you know, reach from many, many years back, you know, through marriage, maybe his parents or grandparents, but his background, there was some Jewish in him. So he took me home and I had dinner there, and they had a little boy. He took me for a ride in the mountain, and he asked me, we'd like to adopt you. And I went hysterical. I said, my parents are coming back, you cannot adopt me. And I cry. So they decided that I'm not the one they could adopt because I was fighting him, so it was no good. So he took me back to the home, and that's when I stay. So at the end there, when it was time for me to get out, someone came and picked me up and took me to the farm. And supposedly she introduced herself as a member of the Red Cross. This, I remember that. That's why I don't know what happened between it was all member of the Red Cross, but I guess that's the way they passed, but I'm sure it was the underground. And I was there at the farm. And for the beginning, they were receiving a check to take care of me, you know, and things. But eventually, when it got worse, I guess, they didn't get nothing. So then it was a little harder. They made me do more labor, the wife there. But it wasn't that bad. They all worked hard. So, but in those days, I resented it. You know, I was a child, and I resented it. I had to get up early in the morning, snow or heat or anything, and wash the potatoes, or we call it topinambour. I don't remember. I don't even know what it is here, to feed the pigs. That was my job. And I used to love it because the little baby pigs, that was my pets, you know. I felt like, oh God, I have a pet now. Then after this, at night, maybe I had to milk the cow. And I knew how to do that too. And during the day, in the afternoon, I used to take the sheep to pasture. And really, I didn't suffer from hunger. They really did not mistreat me. I had to work hard, though. It came on Sunday. I had no contact too much with other children except on Sunday. Going to church. I had to go to church every Sunday morning to make sure I had something decent to go with. From door clothes, they make them smaller and put them on me. I mean, I looked decent. I didn't look less than the other children, the other farmers' children. And after church, I was allowed to go with one girl who was a neighbor farmer. I had to walk a little bit. And we could stay together and talk, and we're the same age. And then I come home. And Sunday, I didn't have to do much. Just maybe helped in the kitchen, you know, taking off the table, like little chores here and there. The farmer had given me a room with a back door that in case someone would come in through the front door, if I heard any noise during the front door, I could run in the woods. They lived on the base of the wood, a mountain, a hill, a big hill. They had shown me where I should go. I had one little suitcase that was always packed. And I lived out of a suitcase. There was nothing else. Couldn't show that there was somebody here. There was like a back room where they used to take care of the honey, and they had beehives, and they used to like cultivate the honey, you know, taking care of it. And there was all kind of these machines there. Make it look like it was just a spare room. And they had like a trap under the bed, and that's when I had to run if anything. They told me to shove my clothes, my big suitcase under there, grab the little one and go. That was they had told me. Well, in between, the minister had found my suitcase. I don't know how. My name was inside, outside, everything. I mean, it was all over, so they found it. And I found the suit of my mother. So that suitcase followed me every place, you know. I wind up over there, and I stayed there till the liberation. But in between, they couldn't understand why I had an adult suit and a pair of adult shoes with spike heel in my suitcase. They said, we could make something for you with this. And I started crying. I didn't want them to touch this. I was hoping that my parents come back and I could give them something to get started. I thought it was a fortune in there. It was almost nothing. But in my mind, you know, I thought it was this. Then I told them, I says, they took out the money. They made something for themselves. It was cut out with a breast, you know, it was not. So they make something for themselves, but from their clothes they made for me. You know, everybody was not, I mean, they couldn't afford much clothes neither. So they made something for themselves. The shoes they couldn't wear, but they didn't want it in my room in case, wondering, you know, what a pair of adult clothes should be there. They took the money out and kept it. Okay, well, I said, that's it, it's gone. But I never fought them because I felt, well, maybe they want to get paid for what they're doing. When the liberation came, and I was allowed to go in the city. It's a little town, but to them it was the city. And see all the American soldiers come in. I was allowed to go with that girl, not by myself, I guess, for security. They want to make sure. It was great. It was wonderful. But I still didn't know if I was going to see my parents, you know. I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on, really. And the American soldiers throwing the chocolate and the chewing gum, because really that's the sweetness we didn't get during the war, you know. No, it's all with ration, you know, the stamps and tickets. They had to buy food, and it was great. All the kids getting all excited, picking up all these goodies that the American threw down from their tank and everything. Then in the evening we came home, and there was a dance, and people dancing and singing in the street. But during that time that I was there was an escape from a prisoner of war. They hid too, not only me. For the first 2 years, I was about there 2.5 years, maybe less. It was fine. I didn't have to run in the woods and hide. The last 6 months was terrible. Every time, some people must have known they were hiding the prisoner of war, but they didn't know they were hiding a Jewish child. They came to him and says, go hide, they're in town. So right away, he went in the wood, and I went with for a couple of times with him. We grabbed our little suitcase. He was doing the same thing. He had his little suitcase packed, and we went in the wood.
This prisoner of war was living with the farmer?
With the farmer, and worked with them as a labor, you know.
I see.
Okay. At the end, it got too bad. He went and worked with the other guy. And then it happened one time I had to go by myself in the wood. And I was petrified with that suitcase sitting there by a place was all bushes there, and they told me to sit there, and I would hear some kind of a whistle when it's safe, you know, the sun will come and get me. They knew that the prisoner of war was not going to come back, that he was going to go with the underground, and that's where he had gone. And I started crying when he left me there. I didn't know till I hit that spot where I was supposed to stay. And he says, don't worry, I have to go. They'll come and get you. Well, they did come and get me. And that's the only time I had to go in the woods by myself and hide, really. All right, when after the liberation, the farmer talked to me. They left me alone for a while, but I was depressed. I wanted to find my parents. I wanted to know if they were alive. I says, what do I do now? I remember all of a sudden that man in Vénissieux, in the camp where my father found him, told him my uncle wasn't taken. So I says, well, let me write to the mayor of the town. And I remember the town, but I couldn't remember no other address. So I wrote the town and the department, you know, it was La Loire. I don't remember that small town. I wrote to the mayor, and I was waiting to get news, okay. The mayor received my letter, and on his own bicycle, he knew where my uncle lived in another town. It's around Rouen-Noir. It was in Riorges. And he took the letter and gave it to my uncle. So my uncle, by that time, knew already I was alive. He wrote me a letter, a few words. He didn't know to read too much French. His wife wrote. And just a few words saying, we'll see you soon. We're working at it. Take care of yourself. We love you. Something like this in French. Okay, through the Red Cross, a telegram came that the farmers had to take me to a certain place in Gap. It was like another bigger city. And dropped me off at this place of the Salvation Army. It was like Salvation, it was a small place, you know, that during the war people stayed there maybe. That woman was there with a little boy. Before I left, they hugged me, said goodbye to farmers, and handed me the money. They even made a pouch and hanged it on my chest. It says, if you need it, at least you have something. They gave me back everything. Well, when I wind up in the Salvation Army, I don't know what happened. Nobody came and picked me up. Some misunderstanding maybe or what. I stayed there a few days. I was under the impression that woman was Jewish too, in hiding, and finally wind up there with that little boy. And she spoke another language, but I don't remember what it was, with that little boy. And I stayed there. Then all of a sudden she says, you know, I cannot afford to support you. But I didn't want to touch that money. So I says, well, I have a few francs. I says, I'll give it to you, that I had in my pocket. And I gave it to her. I said, that's all what I have. I still wanted that money for my parents. I thought I could help them to get a start. She put me on a train. She paid for the ticket. I guess I didn't give her much. I didn't have much. And sent me to a woman who had another Jewish child. An older person, beautiful woman. When I was over there, I stayed with her a while. She wanted to adopt that child. That child was given to her by the parents. It was a little girl, blonde, beautiful child. That's why I thought I had her picture. I was looking for her picture, and she was with that woman. Thought if I could find, I'm still going to look maybe in and see. And she kept me for a while. It was so nice to be there, and she gave me beautiful little blouses she made from her blouses, and went out even bought little socks for me, and took care of me as much as she took care of that little girl. And she told me, I'm taking care of you. And I still remembered, you have to promise me. Don't tell nobody I have a Jewish child here hidden. And I promised her, and I kept my promise. I never told nobody it was a Jewish child. She says, I'll give it only to the parents. I will never give her to nobody else. So I don't know what happened to that child. While I was there, I must have catch this at the Salvation Army. I wound up being full with lice. Body, hair, everything. I woke up one morning, I couldn't sleep the whole night. I didn't know what was happening to me. I woke her up, I was embarrassed. It was degrading, really, to me. You know, I remember my mother being so spotless and meticulous with me, being an only child. I went to her and I told her. She says, oh my God, she was so afraid that another little girl was going to catch us. She says, I cannot keep you. She disinfected the bed, then stripped, disinfected the whole, fumigate the whole room. I had to pack my suitcase. She put me on the train. She gave me an address. She thought it was the Jewish Community Center. She says, go find this, and they could get you to a Jewish Community Center. By the time I hit Grenoble, that was in Grenoble she wanted. It was a bigger city. It was a much larger city. I got the address. Nobody knows of this place. So I'm walking in the street, not knowing where I'm going. I left my suitcase on the train where you could store your luggage. I know I couldn't carry it with me. I walk in the street, and I cry there over a bridge. And I kept looking down and thinking, what do I do now? You know, scared, petrified. I was scared. At that time, I was 14, I guess. I was close to 15, and my birthday's in July. And there's a young couple there, holding hands, hugging and kissing, and they start talking Hebrew. I says, oh God. I went and approached them. I said, are you Jewish? They looked at me, they were afraid to admit it. Even after the liberation, people were afraid to admit that they were Jews. And they looked at me and stared at me. Then the young man asked her. He was over 20. I mean, they were not teenagers. What I was doing, and I explained a little bit of my situation, what happened. He said, okay, I'm taking you home. They lived so poorly, you know, wherever they could survive after the war, everybody tried the best. And that poor mother must have full of arthritis. I remember a hand like this, and she made matzah ball to eat. It was not made with matzah, it was made with breadcrumbs. I don't know what she made, but it looked like matzah ball. I says, what's this? She says, well, I'll make a matzah ball. I said, but that's not matzah. It must have been dry bread that she had grated. Couldn't even grate it. She asked me to help her to grate it. And her husband helped her. And I told him I was full with lice. I admitted it because I didn't want to. He says, don't worry. We saw worse than that. You'll sleep on the floor. They put blankets, a few blankets on the floor. He says, and tomorrow I'll have it fumigated. And he kept me there. They didn't put me out. I slept there even more than one day. He wanted his girlfriend to take me, but she wouldn't. She was afraid because of I was infested. Then the next day he took me to the Jewish community. I mean, there was like a Jewish community center that they had rebuilt for all the people who were safe survivors, you know, and things went into hiding, all the hidden people, adults, children. And I asked him, I want to take a bed. I thought that if I take a bed, everything's going to disappear. But they did. They sent me to a hospital. I was so embarrassed. They put me in the nude, sprayed me all over, then put me in a room. And something came from the room, I don't know. They took my clothes and fumigated them too. And then after this is fine. Then that girl wanted me in her house, so they kept me for a while till they could find my uncle again, to get back in contact, to see how they're going to do this. I had to take from Grenoble, I had to take a train to go to Rouen. Again, that's where the train station was. So my uncle sent a telegram, I'll be waiting for you on this day, this time. They put me on the train, and where we exchange, they announced that the next train is delayed. And I didn't know where to turn. My uncle had no telephone. I just knew the street. And by that time, I knew already the town. I didn't know the street. Because you send a telegram in France, in the small town, you just give the name, and that's it. And then in the town, and no street, nothing. So I really didn't have a full address of my uncle. The man, I cried, and I didn't have no change. At that time, I would have taken the money, but it was all paper money. So the man saw me crying. He said, do you want a cup of coffee? Well, I was scared. He was like an older man. I was a little scared. He says, he went and got myself a cup of cocoa. And he gave it to me. And I says, boy, I don't know that man. It was scared me, you know. Then he says, what happened with you? Why are you by yourself in a train station? You're too young. Because I looked like I was 8. Not, you know, I was so short and skinny. And he gave me money to call my uncle. I explained him what happened. Tell him the train is delayed. Well, my uncle had no phone. You called the post office. They give him the message. You see, they go and get him. They hold the line. They give him the message. And then he came. He says, okay, I'll wait for you. See, it was like a little town built around the post office and City Hall and everything. But City Hall was further away. And I'll wait for you. It's okay. That man didn't leave me alone till I went on that train, that older person. I thanked him and went on. I arrived in Rouen at the train station. My uncle didn't recognize me, and I didn't recognize him, and we didn't get together. He went home without me, and I stayed at the train station. I felt like the whole world had fallen apart. I stood with my suitcase there. I fell asleep, and as I fell asleep on a man. My head. It was a younger man, closer to my age, I think, maybe 19, 18, you know. We started flirting. And then he says, let's go have some coffee. We went and had coffee. And then I started train station. I said, my uncle was supposed to pick me up. So we went, he took me. I guess he felt so sorry for me. He took me to the train station, the chief there, I don't know, somebody there explained the condition. He says, look, you stay here, and tomorrow morning we'll see what we could do. Well, they couldn't do nothing, hoping that my uncle might come back early in the morning. Never came back. He thought I didn't make it. I remember it was pouring rain. I says, can I leave my little suitcase here? And they kept it. They gave me a ticket for it. And I walked, hoping I would be as lucky there than I was in Grenoble, finding people, maybe talk Jewish or what. Well, it rained so hard, you didn't see too many people there. So I asked people, where is City Hall? I mean, just the name, and it should be registered, because everybody in Belgium has to walk around with an identification card. You cannot walk around with just like this, everybody there. So I went there. It was a bunch of young people there at the office, and I was soaking with my hair hanging, everything. I mean, I looked like a mess. They started laughing. They thought I looked funny. Well, I guess I did. And I asked for that person. I says, well, my uncle lives here. I says, because I received a telegram. He says, well, we don't have nobody by that name. But they didn't even bother go looking in the books, So one guy, yes, did pretend he was looking, and then he says, no, we don't have nobody by that. I don't know if he realized I was Jewish or what. I have no idea. And I just told him I missed my uncle at the train station, and that's it. After this, I walked and I went to the post office. I says, look, you deliver some telegram to my uncle this and this day, and I received some back. I says, I don't have his full address. I just know it's in Riorges, but I don't know where it is. And I missed my uncle on the train station. I thought he didn't come and get me. Okay, that's the point. I didn't realize he didn't recognize me. And she really was pretty sarcastic, and there was a man behind me. He says, don't you see that child is suffering enough? Can you do something for her? Finally, no, the first time I went out of the line, she says, get out of the line. She says, I'm busy. Don't you see all these people behind you? But I went back in line. I was determined that somebody's going to have to give me an answer. I didn't know where to turn at that point. And that's when that man said, don't you see that child is suffering enough? He must have realized what's going on or what. And she went and looked through where the telegram was delivered from this person. They must have this on file. And they took me to my uncle. The man walked me halfway there. He said, okay, that's that all the way down there. And they lived in a place there, and he went back to his sewing. He was a custom tailor. And when I walked in, he was fitting a man there. And he looked at me, he turned white like a ghost. And he says, I didn't see you. And I passed out. I just was in a state of shock. When I came back to myself, my aunt was smacking my face. And then I saw my little cousin. She couldn't even talk. She was almost 3 years old, I guess, for being in hiding too. They had given away that child. She couldn't talk, and I just went and they started hugging me and kissing me, and that little girl wanted to hug me, and I didn't want to hug her. I was afraid she was going to catch my lice. I stayed away from her, and I took my uncle's big shear, I remember, and I cut off all my hair. They couldn't stop me. They were afraid because I went like crazy. But I didn't have no more lies. It was just, in my mind. After I felt better after I cut my hair, I guess all my frustration, everything went out. I went crying and crying. They couldn't stop me. They had a customer there. He went out. He says, I'll be back tomorrow. And then we all sitting there carrying on. Then my uncle explained to me that he didn't see me. So I guess he didn't recognize me. And the next day, my aunt took me to the doctor to see if I was well, if everything was all right with me, because I went through more the time I was liberated than I almost, during that little time I had there to find my uncle being lost and shipped from one place to another. I was like, the only thing they had to give me is like something to calm me down because my nerves were shocked. I was always shaking and I had like a nervous tick, always trying to clear my throat. I always had that lump in my throat. But after I was there and lived a more relaxed life and met other Jewish young children, I felt better. But I had to legalize my paper because I was still under my false name. So what I did, I wrote to the City Hall of Charleroi and explained, they knew all about that. I mean, I was not the only child who was with a false name. They sent me my birth certificate. I wrote a letter to Julie to have a residence certificate from where I was living before the war. I needed that too to get my card, if not I couldn't walk around. And so Charleroi and Julie knew I was alive. They all knew, the neighbors, because the police, it's not a big town, they went around and said the shoemakers, Leah, I had a nickname, Leah Banana. Leah Banana is alive. They didn't know nothing about my father. There was a Jewish family who lived down the street from me. When he found out I was alive, my father had a sister who survived the war too. He went to my aunt and told, your brother is alive in France, the older one, and the daughter of Zelig is alive too. Leah is alive too. And so it took time for me to have all my paper legalized, and I was able to have my card to be able to get food and things like that. At that point, I gave my aunt and uncle the money, and I told them to do whatever they need for me. My shoes were worn out. They went out and bought on the black market a pair of shoes for me. My aunt bought me. Didn't take just the money for the shoes because that was expensive. They didn't have much needed and my uncle was a tailor, so he made me clothes from pieces of material my aunt bought and things like this for me to look decent. And Mama aunt took me to the beauty parlor to have my hair shaped because I really messed it up.
Leah, how did you find your father?
Right, I'm coming to it now. So my hometown knew I was alive. The Jewish community of Rouen came to my uncle and said, what are you going to do with that child? She missed too much schooling. You have to teach her something. She has to learn something. You cannot leave her like this. He says, if you sign paper, we'll take her, we'll train her, and we'll send her to a kibbutz in Israel. My uncle says, I cannot do this. If my brother ever survived, and he found out I gave away his child, he'll never forgive me. So my uncle didn't sign the paper. So we were there. So that was all. I arrived there, and I must have stayed 7-8 months, not a whole year with my uncle. And I remember it was around this time because we were cleaning the house for Passover. The house, the little place they had with my aunt. And a telegram arrived. Dad is alive, see you soon. When that telegram arrived, and it arrived from Charleroi. At that time, we knew my aunt was alive because she, City Hall gave her the address, and she wrote to her brother, to my uncle. When I got that telegram, my uncle grabbed the telegram, I grabbed the telegram, and we ripped it in two. We were so nervous. that telegram came from the mayor. He came on a bicycle again because my father arrived in Charleroi much later than all the other Jews came back. Because while he was in camp, he found a niece who was laying with typhoid fever. That's my cousin who lives in California now. So he says, I don't know if he knew my mother was not alive anymore. And he says, well, if my child is not alive, at least I'll have my daughter's child. She's 5 years older than me. Her name is Leah too, okay? So he waited till she got well, and then he came to Belgium, and it was quite a while after the other one. And every day I used to go to the Jewish community and see if my father's name, they used to have like on the wall the name of people who came out of the camp. Never saw my father's name. And my uncle says, well, I guess he didn't make it. The Jewish community came again. Finally, my uncle signed a paper for me to go in a kibbutz. And that's when the telegram came. Okay. So it wasn't meant to be. Through the Red Cross, I make sure that, that first telegram came. When my father arrived to Belgium, went off the train, there was always in every train station, there was a station from the Red Cross for all these refugees and everybody coming back and the prisoners. My father came back more with the prisoners of war, not the Jewish people. And he came with Lola, with Leah. I mean, we call her Lola not to get confused. Came at the train station and he went and asked, is there any Jews still alive? He says, yeah. There is quite a few. And he asked where my father lived before the war. And he told him where. He said, do you know a Monsieur Faye? Monsieur Faye was a principal of a school. Not the school where I was, another school. He was one of our neighbors. And every couple of days he stopped with my father and talked to him, politics, all kinds of things. That was their gabbing there together. So my father said, God, that's a friend of mine. He says, okay, I'm going to call him and tell him you're here and you're alive. He'll come and get you. They call him, and Monsieur Faye, the Jewish family, who lives down the street, was his next door neighbor. He knocked on the wall and screamed, and went outside, screamed, the shoemaker is alive, and everybody was outside. That Jewish family ran out. That was Monsieur Kornblit, Max Kornblit. My girlfriend comes every second year and visits me, his daughter. Came to the train station, and my father is there, and he says, oh, they're hugging and crying and everything. And he says, my God, Zelig, how come you found Leah already? And that's the way my father found out I was alive. He said, that's not my Leah. He said, that's my sister's Leah. Because he heard her calling Leah. He says, my Leah is alive? He says, yeah, she's at your brother in France. And my father broke down and said, my brother is alive. He says, it's your sister too. So the only two sisters lost, the two were in Poland with their children, except one of the sisters. The two children are here, one of each. Then that's when he sent that first telegram, but it was the wrong address. My uncle didn't live there no more. So the mayor came, and that's when we got that first telegram. Well, a couple of days. Meanwhile, I had already get in touch with the Red Cross. How do I go home? The Red Cross used to take care of all this because I was still a minor. And I wanted to go back home. And my uncle wanted to see his brother and his sister. So the Red Cross sent me a ticket. Meanwhile, the second telegram comes. Monsieur Max took my father to his sister, and they arrived there, They still live in the same old house they used to live before the war. They took it. There was a law of the house from these people who went to, during concentration camp, their quarters, their business had to be returned to them. So my uncle got back his place. And my aunt was happy. She got another sister's child there. And then I heard Leah is alive in Maxter. He said, yeah. He says, I sent already a telegram. He says, where? He said, no, they don't live there. So my uncle right away took the trolley, went to send another telegram to the real address. So the second telegram came too. We got 2 telegrams. During that time, between all that, a ticket came from the Red Cross and I was able to travel legally. Because, you know, I had no passport, nothing. I mean, I was still a minor. My uncle went and smuggled into Belgium to be able to see his brother. And I'm sure it cost him quite a penny, but he wanted to see. Well, in Paris we were split, okay? Because I went legally and he went illegally. So through Paris he knew some people there, he found them. And they took care of him to go through. I go on the trolley. I still remember where my uncle lived, everything. So I went there. My father goes out of the place. He looked all swollen. He didn't even look skinny. Like, you know, you heard people saying that the people coming out from cancer, he was swollen. No hair, you know, just starting to grow. And he looked so pathetic. I mean, so worn out, so old to me. I thought it was another custom of my uncle, you know. I didn't realize it was my father. I walked in the house and my aunt is screaming. She thought it was a customer downstairs. She said, who is it? I say, it's Leah. She says, what kind of Leah? You know, she thought it was the other Leah. She said, Tante. We call her Tante. I said, it's Leah. She ran down the steps and she knew right away who I was. So kind says, your father just walked out, and I ran out and I realized it was him. And I ran after him. And I says, Papa. That's Daddy for French, in French. And we were crying there, standing in the street there and crying. My uncle is looking at us. He's just, first word I ask, where is my mother? He says, we'll talk about it. He never wanted to talk about it. Then we came back in the house. They never went with, my uncle went by himself and he walked back with me. And he told me that my cousin was alive. And I remember her from going to Poland. And then we found out that the other niece is alive too, from the oldest sister, one of them. But she lived in France. And then after this, my father just helped my uncle being a shoemaker, tried to make ends meet. The Ort trained me for typing in shorthand, but I never used it. And clothing came to the Jewish Community Center, and we were allowed to go and pick out what we could. Each child was allowed to pick up 1 or 2 outfits, I don't remember. I had no winter coat, so from an American blanket, bought in the black market, we dyed it in brown, and we had a coat made for me. And because winter was approaching in Belgium, the winters are pretty rough. And we stayed with my aunt for a while. Everything ran smooth, but it was rough. Everything was crowded. We were all together. And it didn't work out. I had a rough time with my uncle there. Couldn't stay there. My father stayed there. And he wanted me to, I was so innocent. He wanted me to go pick up some American soldiers. He told me he doesn't feed me for nothing. He wanted to do black market with them, I guess.